support in and trying something really crazy, and that is to stand alone, to begin walking behavior, eventually walking around the furniture and then walking alone. See, these are progressions, inter-skill sequencing. And so we recognize that rudimentary skills involve such things as walking, crawling, creeping, reaching, grasping, balancing, sitting, voluntary, intentional activities. Rudimentary skills are very, very important. Most of those occur during the first year of life. To the point where by the time we reach around 12 months of age, most human beings are walking. Not all. They're still within normal ranges. Even up to 14 months of age, you're still within one standard deviation of most people who start walking. If you're delaying it out beyond 14, 15, 16 months, then we start to become maybe a little bit concerned. Actually, the parents are a lot concerned, but medically we're not terribly concerned yet. But any delays beyond that, then we start to become concerned about their normal growth and development. Next level of the model, fundamental motor skills. FMS always stands for fundamental motor skills for me. Fundamental motor skills can be divided into three categories: locomotors, object control / manipulative. People call them both, object control and manipulative. And then the final category is stability. This semester we will spend a lot of time learning the stage development and stage sequencing of about 11 fundamental motor skills. And when we're completed with that, you'll be able to extrapolate and say that there's other skills that you could probably stage out, even though it's not done quite as scientifically as what I will be presenting to you. The stage sequencing occurs during this fundamental motor skill development. So we learn such things as running, hopping, skipping, jumping, galloping, leaping, catching, throwing, kicking, bouncing. See, some of these things involve an object, some of them involve our bodies, as we talked about when I gave you your definition of fundamental motor skills involving one or two or more bodily segments resulting in the transfer or reception of the body or some object. I gave you some of that then. This just identifies those a little bit more. Here's what's fascinating about this model, if it's a physical representation of a reality, is I want you to know that if you do not develop your fundamental motor skills, if the sequence is not followed well, especially reaching maturity in fundamental motor skills, we run up against something known as a proficiency barrier. It's something that's hard to get through over and around. The proficiency barrier. We must have fundamental motor skills reaching maturity. Now, what do I mean by reaching maturity? You recall on the first day of class that I said that we could actually stage out, sequence out our fundamental motor skills, and I used throwing as an example. Most people learn to chop throw, learn to sling throw, get to the ipsilateral stage quite naturally. It tends to emerge and be very neurologically controlled. As we get neurological advancement, as we grow older, without a lot of instruction, we'll eventually get to this point. But one of the things that we discover is without instruction or examples or environmental influences, we typically won't reach maturity in throwing, hopping, kicking, catching, scraping. Well, scraping's not a fundamental motor skill. You get the idea. You're just not going to get there outside of good instruction. And you might even at this point be saying, wait a minute, I think I reached maturity at throwing, and nobody ever taught me that I had to take a contralateral step and segmentally derotate my body and make sure that it was a low wind-up and that my follow-through was across the body on a diagonal. Nobody ever taught me that. Yes, they did. In some way. You just may not remember it. It might have been through observation. It might have been because Stephen was out on the playground one day. This Stephen, not this one. It would never happen to me. But Stephen was out on the playground one day, and he was throwing like this to his friend, and he was 30 years old at the time. No, I mean 6 years old at the time. So here he was throwing like this, and somebody said, Stephen throws like a girl, Stephen throws like a girl. How many times do you think an elementary age boy needs to hear that they throw like a girl? By the way, it's not throwing like a girl, it's throwing stage 3 of performance. But that's what happens out on the playground. And Stephen says, I'm doing something wrong. And he starts to watch, observe the other kids in class, and the ones that he sees throwing like this, he realizes they're throwing. So it could be through environmental influences of straight observation. It could be a teacher. It could be that he ran home and cried. And they said, I throw like a girl. And Dad says, you do throw like a girl. Let's change that. I don't know what influences happen, but if we don't reach maturity, this proficiency barrier is like going rock climbing at the last rock climbing place you were at. Do you remember it? Have you ever gone rock climbing? You ever gone scrambling these little buildings that they have? Because not a lot of mountains around here. But they've got these little nubbies that stick out of the wall. And I like this. I think it's fun. I took my daughter for her 16th birthday there. That's what she wanted to do, is go climbing. So we go out and we climb. And these walls are great. We go up. We get these cords all attached to us. And we're just having so much fun. And then I look over, and here's this crazy dude. He's upside down holding on to, I don't know, a thimble sticking out of the wall. And he's got his fingers gripped around it. And he's got one leg trying to go up and over. That's the proficiency barrier, folks. That's Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 2, right? With the opening scene, and Tom Cruise likes to look cool, and he directs his own movies. So he's hanging underneath this thing, looking really cool and flexing his biceps. And I don't want to do that because I want to rip my shirt. So here we are. We're hanging underneath this thing, and he climbs up over the top of it eventually, and it's just really, doesn't he get a phone call or something while he's hanging under this thing? That's the proficiency barrier. It's a physical reality here in my drawing that you can't get through this thing. But if you're skillful, you'll get through the proficiency barrier. And after you get through the proficiency barrier, you're into the transitional skills of the motor development model. The transitional skills are vital to what comes next, which are the sports and games and dances of our culture. And I wish I would have drawn this model. Don't put a top line on this model like I have. I should have left the black line off the top. Because in reality, sports and game skills and dances are constantly evolving within our life. Well, let's go back to transitional before I comment too much more on sports, games, and dances of our culture. Transitional skills. Once I have the ability to do fundamental motor skills, you remember the next thing that I put in my PowerPoint presentation? And it said, now let's define what a sports skill is. It's when we combine fundamental motor skills, we get into sport skills. And then when we formalize those, we have sports. And so we recognize that the transitional is kind of the application of two or more fundamental motor skills put together. And so we have games like Newcomb and indoor soccer or volleyball with a trainer ball, where we have some sort of adjustment to the official rules of it so that we can develop the skills. I think transitional skills are where we need to spend most of our time once we hit secondary education level, maybe middle school level. I really do, because we so often, even at the elementary level, we have children playing 11v11 soccer. Are you serious? Do you realize how little a child can touch the ball in 11v11 soccer in a 1 hour time period? If you put them in 3v3 soccer with little puck goals and no goalkeepers, they touch the ball all the time and they actually get better. It's a crazy idea, getting better, but they actually get better because they get lots of contact. 11 versus 11 football with full pads. That's my assistant coach's son playing, and he was 10 years or 9 years old when he started. And you could go a whole game and never touch the ball, or get blocked once and go out for that, what do they call that, that down, that inning? What do they call it in football? Yeah, sit down. Is that an inning? You sure? All right, good. Once we learn to do things in these controlled multi-contact settings, then we move into the sports and games of our culture. Oh my goodness. I love sports and games, don't you? I love playing sport. I love participating in it. So do children. But you know what? There's a whole gaggle of children. It's like geese. There's a whole gaggle of children who don't like sports and games and dances. Why not? Right back here, folks. They don't have the fundamental motor skills to do it.